Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining the Haitian Studies Association's Emerging Scholars Café. We have some video that's still playing. It's going to turn off in a little bit. Thank you for your patience in showing up. Technical difficulties are as they are. My name is Félix Jean-Louis. I am an assistant professor at the University of California at Irvine, and I am honored to present the event today and mark the relaunching of the Emerging Scholars Cafes. This is the first in several that we hope to put on in the next academic year. And this cafe brings together scholars of Haiti across the ocean. We have emerging scholar Andy-Frestner Joseph, who holds a master's degree in political science from the Faculty of Political, Administrative, and Communication Sciences. And he's going to present part of his thesis, Rural Families and Public Policy versus the Global Development Agenda in a Developing Country, a case study, Celsa La Source, Haiti. In addition to his academic pursuits, he's also an accomplished actor, known for his roles in the long song Perihil and Jupia. Andy will present his work, and then Dr. Mamyrah Douge-Prosper, an assistant professor of global and international studies at University Irvine, will make comments. Mamyrah, Dr. Douge-Prosper, excuse me, specializes in research on social movements in the Caribbean and Latin America, in particular Black and Haitian social movements. Her work has appeared in the Journal of Haitian Studies, recently serving as a co-editor for a special issue on sexualities. Also, her work has appeared in NACLA and CAFU. If you are a regular attendee of the Haitian Studies Association events, you will notice that Mamyrah has appeared in several events. And so now I want to go ahead. I will share Andy's PowerPoint and I will introduce Andy. Andy, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
I just want to make sure, can we see the PowerPoint? Yes,
we can
Andy?
see it.
Okay,
Yeah, I can see it.
Thank you.
So here we go. I'm going to reintroduce myself. My name is Andy-Frestner Joseph, as Dr. Jean-Louis said, a scholar from Haiti, from Bolyai University in Cluj-Napoca. So today, I want to present my thesis, Rural Families and Public Policy versus the Global Development Agenda, case study Circulations Haiti. But first of all, I want to thank HAC for the opportunity to be part of this wonderful event, for Dr. Prosper, Dr. Jean-Louis for bringing me here, and of course to each of you for assisting. So as you know, Haiti has seen countless of foreign interventions and has received billions in aid. Yet, rural families still struggle to face their basic needs. So this led me to ask an important question. How has the strong influence of foreign actors and NGOs affect the Haitian government ability to deliver public policy in rural areas? We know that in Haiti's context, families, mainly rural families, are at the heart of development. So their services are often controlled by outsiders, while the state remains underfunded and fragmented. If we look back at history, please, if you can switch the next slide. Switch to the next slide. The other one. Yeah, thank you. If we look back at history, in 1825, France imposed the infamous double debt on Haiti. So for its independence to be recognized, Haiti had to pay 150 million francs. That money could have built public goods foster short and long-term sustainability, but unfortunately, it wasn't the case. Later, during the US occupation from 1915 to 1934, almost all the state revenues went to debt payment. But once again, Haiti couldn't invest in public goods. Another form of foreign influence came through economic policy, mainly under the trade liberalization policies. If we can switch to the other slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So, under pressure from international institutions, Haiti removed import restriction and cut tariffs on key crops. So, research highlighted that rice dropped from 15% to 3%, as we can see there, beans to 0%, and corn to 15%. Even sugar was also hit. So that explains that uh, protections for farmers, you can say protections for farmers disappeared, and cheap import flooded in, so local producer couldn't compete. So that caused a sharp decline in local production, of course, affecting directly rural families. If we see, take a look in the second chart, please. Can you switch? Thank you. So here we can see that also sugarcane production in Haiti was declined as well significantly, starting in 1986 by 2000. So that is a clear example, right? That is a clear example of how foreign driving trade policies so reshaped Haiti's rural economy and undermined self-sufficiency. So now I want to talk. I'd like to talk about the NGO, the dominance of NGOs today. Since 1954, Research Act, NGOs were established in Haiti, in the country, after the Hurricane Hazel. In 1981, they were directly assigned from the US, the United States, to receive aid. So recently, more recently, after the 2000 earthquake, 80% of basic services were provided by NGOs in Haiti. Meanwhile, in the fiscal year 2007-2008, so the Haitian government had 22.5 million for its budget compared to the USAID's 300 millions in aid. So almost all that money bypassing the state institutions. So in other words, that money went directly to NGOs. So while NGOs are receiving billions in aid to provide the so-called basic needs, the government remains underfunded to subsidize local project and local development. So please, if you can switch the, yeah. Yeah, government budget with the USAID, that is the short explaining the discrepancies, if I can say it like this, between the money that NGOs received and the weak, we can say the limited budget of government, Haitian government. If you can switch, please, this next slide. Yeah. So now I'd like to point out the case study evidence from Siakaraso's Haiti. So, according to the Haitian Institute of Statistics and Informatics, Circalasos in 2015 had around 56,532 inhabitants. So based on these data, we conducted a research of 1,047 families. So here we can see that 70% respondents face challenges for food security or for receiving subsidy for agriculture, and also 80% health issues, education around. Hello?
I was there some weeks ago and 2 weeks ago, and I have an appointment at MIM, and I was supposed to tell you the date of the appointment.
Sorry?
Sorry, somebody's mic is on and we were able to hear your conversation here. It took me a while to stop my screen share. I apologize for the delayed comments. If we could remember to stay muted while Joseph is presenting his research. Let me return to the screen share.
I can continue?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So as I said, 70% face agricultural problems, 80% lack proper healthcare, 89% face education challenges, 70% lack clean water, 80% lack electricity, and 88% face challenges to employment opportunities, and 95% suffer from poor infrastructure. So let's switch the next slide, please. Yeah, here it is the regression results. So by analyzing the results, we can see that food security in Circalasos and the marked by two main factors: the dominance of NGOs and the weak government support. So here the X1, it is the dominance of NGO, factor 1, and the second, it is X2, the weak government support. As we can see in the result, the odds ratio for both factors are significant. So both worsen food insecurity in Haiti. For example, we know in a country like ours, like Haiti, where agriculture is the backbone of economy, so that the fact that the government doesn't have sufficient funds to finance or subsidize a local project, nor it is engaged to designing a solid public policy system, the result is devastating for farmers, mainly farmers and families in rural areas. So for health services, SDG3, we see that X1, so the dominance of NGO is not significant, and the X2, it is. So here I want to explain how we have this the data. It is we see it like this. It's because in Circalasos per se, the health services is provided by Zamila Santé. Zamila Santé, it is in a mixed health center run by NGO and the Ministry of Health. So local citizens say they receive health services from Zami La Santé, even though they are facing challenges. They are always facing challenges of lack of medical support and materials. So what they say, they don't see Zami La Santé like a dominant NGO, we can say like that. So they see Zami La Santé like the organization that is trying to help them give with health services. Meanwhile, the government is not here for them, is not helping them. There have been cases, for example, of women giving birth with a birth complication, so they couldn't receive treatment in Sierra, so they had to travel to another city because of lack of medical staff and materials. So sometimes, because of poor conditions of the world, they die, they don't make it. So citizens in Sierra, they say, Zami La Santé is helping us, but the government not. So that is the reason we see that X1, it's not significant because they are not seeing Zami La Santé as we said, like a dominant NGO. That is the reason. So for education, SDG 4, we have X1, which is the dominance of NGO. Again, the weak government support. So both factors are significant. Here also we have a particular example for education in Siakalasos. At the beginning of the school year, NGOs also all the time they show up trying to help a local citizen in Siakalasos with school supplies. Let's say backpacks, notebooks, or even uniforms for the children. But after that, they disappear. But unfortunately, the Ministry of Health of Education doesn't have a strong program, right, to ensure quality education in Siakalasos in the city. So let's say proper classrooms, bathrooms, or school meals for the children. Sometimes the teachers stop to assist they don't assist because they are not getting paid. So we are talking about public school, of course. So families in Siakalasos, they prefer to send their children to private school, even they cannot afford it. Some of them migrate to the Dominican Republic. They work there for 5 or 6 months in order to have enough money and pay school fees. So here again, we see NGOs trying to help with at the beginning of school with we can say, yeah, they need these kind of supplies, but what we need in Haiti, it is public policy in local area to help with quality education. Not only receive aid, receive notebook, receive uniforms every year. So again, we see NGOs with this kind of aid, but the government with public policy is absent. So next slide, please. Yeah, here I just put some recommendations based on our research. So in order to empower rural families, So it's necessary to strengthen government capacity and accountability, prioritize investment in agriculture, health, education, infrastructure to reduce reliance on NGOs, promote food security and agricultural resilience, expand access to credit, irrigation, and farming inputs. I don't know if you, we mentioned that the example of Ministry of Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Rural Development, and its the so-called development program 2010-2015, that they admit that weak institution and the collapse of the state created agriculture offers forced local producers to depend on NGOs run microfinances. So they don't have credit for this kind of local project. So to boost agriculture, to help local farmers, and subsidize for this kind of project. So it's really important to expand access to credit to farmers, to local producers, in order to avoid dependence on NGOs. Invest in rural employment and vocational training. Develop programs that link young people with job opportunities in agriculture, construction, and small enterprises. Reframe role of NGOs. Shift NGOs from direct services providers to partners supporting government-led strategies. So here it's really important. So instead of NGOs providing basic services, we need local producers, local providers to work together with NGOs. Infrastructure for inclusion, prioritize road and transport development to connect rural areas with markets and services, reduce dependency, build resilience, foster policies that empower rural families as active participants, not passive recipients of aid. So just to conclude, we see how foreign interventions have further weakened governance ability and even eroded public trust in our country. So what we need, it is to actually, I know Haiti is facing a lot of challenges, but it is also important to empower rural families, not staying for them to act as Haitian diaspora to do our part. And if we can mobilizing fund, if we can this kind of project to help local farmers, so in this way, we can call the attention of our local leaders and to create public policies to help them and put Haiti back again to its feet. So thank you. I was really nervous, I admit it, but thank you again for the opportunity. And now I hand over to Dr. Prosper.
Thank you, Andy, for that presentation. And since it's already been handed over to you, Dr. Prosper, go ahead.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much, future Dr. Joseph, right? Going from the master's, I suppose, thinking about moving onwards with the PhD. So thank you for the work. And I just want to jump in with some questions for you. And then within the questions, obviously there's some comments, but I'd like to hear more from you. I'm sure the audience as well. And I'm happy to have learned that you also wear a different hat, not just political science, but you're an actor. Because some of the questions that I had was, related to wanting to know more about you, the researcher, what brings you to this work. I know that in your bio, you say you're from Sakalasus, and you point to us like what's important for us to consider in thinking about Sakalasus in particular. And because there's so much work on Haiti, usually focused, if not on Port-au-Prince, but on rural areas, and Plateau Central tends to be the region that we hear the least about. It's very exciting to be able to read work that is showing us this part of the country and what's happening there. So one of my questions, yeah, if we could see your face better, it would help me. Yes, we can only see half of your face. Great.
I would put it like that.
That's perfect. Yeah, so I'm thinking, why this research project, right? You talk about providing evidence-based insight, which is something that we need, right? We often talk about these development goals and Haiti not meeting them. And this is an important project as far as making us understand the actual material conditions, right? What's there, what's missing, how do people understand, right? What's missing and who's responsible for filling the gap. So I think that that's a very important contribution just for us to be able to have the actual data to back up some of the discourse, right, that often is accompanying how we think about Haiti and what the problems are. But I'm interested in knowing more for you, besides being from there, right? Why this particular research project? What were you interested in finding out? Like, aside from accumulating data to confirm that Haiti is not meeting these development goals, particularly in the plateau, why, right? What drives you to this particular project? I know when I looked at your table of contents, you have like a research question that is burning for you, right? That brings you to doing this work to begin with. So I'm interested in that, right? What the first part is what brings you to this. And again, you end with recommendations, right? These are recommendations that we've seen many times already presented, right, to government officials, right? So I'm just thinking about where you see this research going, right? If you're building a sort of academic profile, or if you're also thinking about how to impact and influence policy, which, I imagine people who go into political science see themselves as being part of a policy-making project. So that's the first set of questions, right? The why for the research. You mentioned we a couple times, so I'm not sure if it's sort of like the Creole nous, or if kankou wap di nous, mais wap pale de ou même, ou bien is there an actual équipe? And that connects to my questions around methods, right? You've done an incredible work, right? 1,074 people who participated in this project, and I'm very blown by it, right? But I'm also interested in understanding the work on the ground that took place, right? Did you have a team? If you're from the area, I know you speak the language, right? But were you the one administering the questions? Did you have folks in the community involved as well? And I am thinking also about the sampling, right? Why 1,074? How does that number compare to the number of people in the region? Or how did you come to decide on that sample? When I look at the questionnaire that you provided, right? How do you settle on these sets of questions? What is left out? What did you realize after the research, right, could have been included? I didn't get a sense of the sort of participant observation piece, right, to the work that accompanies the sets of questions. And so I'd love to hear more from you about the methods. And when in talking about the sampling, not just the number of people, but who. You mentioned, right, professionals. You talk about students, high school, university grads. You refer to them as farmers. I imagine they talk about themselves as peasants, right? So even in the choice of words, right, to call them farmers versus peasants, you mentioned teachers, doctors, nurses, and I'm wondering, right, who else was left out and who else, now in hindsight, do you think could have been voices that were included in this sampling? I'm also in connection to, this is why I brought up your training as an actor, right? When I read the piece in the intro, you start to put us right in the middle of Selkarasus. You're describing the environment, you're describing like what we see, a little bit of the history. You give us a map, which I think is amazing, right? Because often, maybe for Haitian studies folks, the Haiti map is in our minds, but just thinking about a non-Haitian crowd, right, reading a piece that you might put out, having a map, I think, is really strong, right, to get us to see what you're talking about, particularly when you break down the sections and what they're producing in those particular areas. So I think those were very strong ways to get us in the work. And so my anthropology hat is like, give us more of that, right? Like, who are the people in the town? And as opposed to sort of just naming them as these professional categories in these sectors, but that we might see a little bit of like the process of your work, that we might feel the community, not just in terms of topography or production, but also the people, right? And how they're moving. I suppose you have interview quotes, right? That you have these other materials that, thinking about moving forward with the work and publishing it, that would be great to integrate. I don't think would take away from some of your more policy-driven goals, right? That you seem to have in this work. I wanted to also bring up a question about the variables, right? And so you talk about foreign intervention and NGO hegemony, and then you talk about the NGOs, right, vis-a-vis the state. And what I'm interested in, and this is a general question, and particularly because you talked about Zami La Santé has a relationship with the Ministère de la Santé. So you can see the ways in which NGOs are embedded in the state apparatus, despite, yes, having their own separate budgets, right? So my question to you, and this is part, I think, of developing the work to sort of move beyond here's the evidence to prove to you what we already know, right? But to give us a sense of conceptually, theoretically, what is your intervention, right? What is, for example, your theory of the state? Is the state over here, right, in foreign interventions, right? Because you go into the 19th century a bit for us in terms of contextualizing debt, right? But we can see that in the 20th century, particularly after 1994, the ways that NGOs, right, become embedded in the state apparatus. So therefore, what is the state vis-a-vis the NGOs, vis-a-vis foreign intervention, right? And I don't know if you say this earlier in the work, so that by the time you get to the sort of meat of the research, the data, I wasn't able to see that, but I'd love to hear more. How do you understand not what the state should be, but what the state is currently, right? Because I feel that actually some of these variables, one, need more definition so we can see how they are different from one another. And I don't mean to say the NGOs in the state are just collapsed and completely same, right? I think there are clear ways that they're different, but there's an intimate relationship that was a deliberate decision, right, at some point by certain heads of state in Haiti. And we can see that there's a scale, right, that there's the level at which the heads of state are making the decision to integrate NGOs within the state apparatus, and there's a difference on the ground with those who have to implement it, right? And so I would have been interested in whether in your questioning of the people on the ground, you took that into account, right? That when we talk about the state, there are different levels of the state and it doesn't operate all in the same way, right? That there's a feeling that perhaps agents of the state on the ground in Sakalasus have and understand about how the state is moving that is beyond, right, their decision-making power. It's happening in the executive, it's happening with parliament, right? That decides to, if we take the earthquake, for example, parliament decides to give over its power to the reconstruction committee, right? We can see the way that the Haitian state is an actor deciding to NGOize itself, right? And that's a different process as to what we feel on the ground, which is why one of my main comments is, can we see more of what you saw on the ground, right? Aside from sort of confirming that the Haitian state is not doing its job because it's allowing the NGOs to fill a gap, and yet none of that actually leads to quote unquote development. And relatedly, and this is part of like pulling on the literature, how are you defining the state? How are you understanding development goals, right, that are set again by the UN versus how people on the ground might understand development and what kind of development they need, right? Versus again, a state that is controlled by supranational institutions, right, having these goals for them. And that's again my anthropology training, wanting a little bit more to see on the ground, to see the people, to understand how you're using these categories, right? How you're defining the state vis-a-vis NGOs, and again, how you're defining the state, right, at the different scales of decision making. And so those are all my questions. I can put some of them in the chat just to help guide you. You don't have to answer them all right now. But I just, especially around the methods, was very curious about 1,074 people, right? Like, that's huge. I'd love to hear at least some of those answers.
Yes, the why, a lot of information, the questions first of all, but I'm going to try to do my best to explain. The why it is because not only I'm from Siakalassos, but also I have families. I have also um, relatives, right? Who are still living there in Siakalassos. So we know what is going on there. For example, I didn't mention the Tremblay project. It's where it's a project of which received funds from the World Bank. So in order to bring clean water in the city. But this project, for example, in the city, in Siakalassos, local citizens say so they were not taking into account. They didn't have a conversation with the people who representing who were representing the NGO or the World Bank. So they only came and they didn't ask what they need. It's okay. They think they need clean water. So we are going to Tremblay because Tremblay is a source. Then we will put 3 cisterns. So even though the water will not going to reach all the people in the city, but we are going to work because we have money. So they said they need clean water, so we're going to work and put clean water. Meanwhile, the people are not in the start. I mean, at the beginning, the project failed because it wasn't. He did not. How can I say? Did not reach all the people in the city. That is a one example, and at the same time. Local citizens say so they don't understand, and that is the main question as well for me, how the state and the NGOs work together. So after that project, the local authorities, so local authorities should have a maintenance policy in order to keep the work going on. I mean, to keep the source, the water project, clean water project. So they don't have, they don't understand, and it was hard for us as well, because when they said, we have project, but after that, after 4-5 years, the project who has made actually is not working. So where we have to go to ask for information to understand what's happening. So it should be the local authorities. So they neither can give an answer about what's going on. So that is our first why I mean, we we understand it is necessary to put out this kind of situation in order to not only us to understand and other people to understand what's going on actually in Haiti. So when I talk about government, first of all, in Secalasus, I think about local authorities. I think it's like the scales start with local authorities, and we go to after Kazakh, deputy, and we go to senator, because they are the people who are representing the rural communities democratically. So that is the in the way I tried to separate, if I can use that word. So local authorities can, deputy and Kazakh, and interclasses, for example, it's about magistrat and deputy. And after that, the senator with the Plateau Central, which represent all projects they have in Congress, if I can say like that. So I forget the first question. It's all about the other
I
question.
think you're getting at it, right? That in the ways that you've put up like local government as a variable, right? Versus like this other scale or layer of the state that invites and embraces, right, NGOs in the state apparatus. And that's exactly what I wanted to get a sense of, is like the difference, right? And I think the work would benefit from you discussing, and maybe you do it in the other chapters, and this is what part of what my question was, right? But that we can see the difference between the executive and parliament making decisions versus at the level of the Kazakh, right? That we're not talking about the state as one thing that is coherent, but that you have different versions of the state depending on the scale at which you're looking. And I think that could be a very interesting dynamic for us to get a sense of in the work, and could go towards what I'm asking, right? What is your theory of the state, right? How do you define the state versus local government, right? What are these concepts that you're using, and sort of, define it for us in the work, right? Because this is part of what some folks are going to want to understand, especially in thinking about the variable. Because again, my first instinct was local government versus NGOs, when actually this was a deliberate, model that at some point, right, decades ago, someone else at a higher up level decided. But like you're pointing to, the local government doesn't understand that or doesn't agree, right? And sees itself being weakened by that process. So I think it would be very rich for us to see that dynamic, and for you to offer your own definition of how we might think of state versus government, right? And state at varying scales. I think that would be a very interesting, rich, and it fits with your political science, right? Political scientists are obsessed with the state. And I think it could be a great way to offer us nuance on how we understand, or how we might understand the state, particularly in Haiti. So thank you for addressing that. And I think you started to touch a bit on the question about how do people on the ground understand development and their needs versus these SDGs, right, that are being imagined outside of Haiti even, So I'd love to hear more on that as well.
I think the point is, sorry for interrupting. I think the point is that when they think about SDGs and for example, project that they implemented in other countries, they came with the same way, and then they think they can implement that kind of project in Haiti as well. Meanwhile, the situation is different. So that is one of the point also I tried to talk about it in the project. It's the lack of communication between NGOs and local communities. So when NGO come, for example, the people who go there to work, often they don't speak Creole, they are not Haitian, and we are here to work, and because we have to work, but they don't understand actually what's going on, what's happening. So I don't know if that is a good sign, but I think actually NGOs, they are losing point. They are losing territory in Haiti because the people actually don't trust on them. They don't have the social trust between NGOs communities, NGOs who are working there, and local communities, or that is not the same. That is not after. I mean, 10 years ago, it was different. So actually, they say in the city, so NGOs actually, they are working. When we see NGOs working, because they will gain billions after that. So if they are trying, so they give us food because we need it, we have to accept it. Many families, for example, in Tiakalasdos, do not accept things from NGOs. So they use the expression like Café. So they don't trust NGOs. So then again, that is the one of the point that led me to make the research. And I do know if I want to go further with the work, I have a lot of work to do. I do know that. And about the methodology, about 1,047 families. So I wasn't there for that. So what I did, it was interview and in WhatsApp, and I sent to friends who they have families who are living there as well in Haiti and Sakalasu. So they sent the questionnaire and they they answer. They try to translate because it was in and French, Français. Many of them understand, but sometimes to write the language, it's difficult for them. So they answer in Creole. So that was about the methodology. The methodology went like that between friends to family to interview, doing interview, and in order to have what I needed. I didn't have enough time to make the research because there was about a thesis. I only had they gave me 3 months, so it was really short time to work. But one point again, I catch up or understood working. It was about the electricity in Zacarasus. For example, there is zero, so we don't have electricity. We do not have electricity, for example, electricity to drive development, technology, and we do not have that. But when we ask them if they have access to electricity, they say yes, because they have the possibility to charge their phone. They can go to the neighbor's house with a solar panel and they watch TV, for them it is access to electricity. Also, it was like I point that out because to explain how for them they are. I mean, they need they need. How can I say that? Or with little things, it's enough for them. So actually, we are living outside overseas. When we talk about electricity, we cannot do anything without electricity. But for them, only charging the phone, watching TV, it's okay. So it was, for me, so, I don't know are the right words. It was so, I don't know, choquant.
Tu peux dire en français ou qu'à dire
Bon,
en
voilà,
créole, no problem.
c'est mieux. C'était choquant. Alors, it was because they do not understand sometimes. I mean, they do not understand actually the the importance of what they need. So so we need clean water. They try to make a project. So they say, so we do not ask. We do not ask how we have to drive with that, or after that, after the project, how, because I want to talk about that, because also we want to they need to be active, not passive. So if they do understand the importance of what they need, they will not be involved in the work. So, and NGOs, they are gaining, I mean, with that. So no, these people doesn't know what they need. So they need water. They were going to put clean water. If then I mean, they don't. If all of them do not have access to clean water, so they don't. I mean, it's okay. It's okay. That's, I'm trying to explain that. The point, what is so important for them, local communities, to get involved, to understand what they need, because it was so overwhelming for me about the electricity. So because I can charge my phone, so for me electricity is okay. So maybe it's one of the point as well that is actually in a city with 56,000 people since 2015, there are still lack of electricity. So because
I
maybe
think that would be interesting, assuming you would pursue this work in your dissertation, to have the component. I know you said, you mentioned interviews, but to give people more room to answer these questions about access and how they view the level of need for electricity, right? Which is like competing with how development agents and ourselves who are in the first world, right, understand what people need to thrive and develop. And there's a tension in those two perspectives about what development is that needs maybe to be teased out more. Because clearly you're saying, right, when you ask them about access to electricity, the way they answer versus the way that you're understanding electricity as a goal, as a development goal, are two different things. So that would be interesting, not just to say this is what the UN says about development, but how do people on the ground understand development? And you, as somebody from there who's concerned about, the development in Calacsus, doing, maybe a participatory action research, right? Which I know is not poli-sci, but it's very anthropology, because it's both, I want to know what you think, and I'm here to also use the research opportunity to educate you, right? So that when you are asking questions again, right? Do you have access to electricity? Now the person is on the same page as you about what access to electricity should really mean versus their bare understanding about, oh, m'charge téléphone mwen, m'gen courant, right? So again, about refining the concepts and how you mean them, but also putting them to the test on the ground as to how people understand it, right? Even access to credit or some other of your variables that you were interested in, right? That people might have a very different understanding on the ground about what these things mean versus what we understand, right? As global North people who, in a sense, like embody some of these UN goals, right, of development in our perspective. I know folks had some questions about, I see a question in the chat about the recommendations. I don't know if you can take a look at the question. And there were a few questions earlier. I think, I'm not sure if the person that Bernice had asked about the population size, which I think you just mentioned, 56,000. And the other thing I was thinking too, again, this is all about sort of refining the concepts is, you know, you say NGOs, we all hear automatically international NGOs, but there are also Haitian-led NGOs, right? And I'm thinking about your recommendation earlier about like what the diaspora could do in terms of like infusing capital into Cercalasus to support development, right? Probably would itself come in the container of an NGO, but is a very different way you're thinking about it, right? So I think even defining NGO in the research that you're specifically thinking about non-Haitian, non-local, non-governmental organizations that get funding from USAID, World Bank, right? As opposed to, and you know, while Neil is here and I know some of his research or my research, we look at social movement organizations that take the NGO form to receive funding, but are operating, we think, differently than international NGOs, right? So I think defining these things more clearly, or even for an intervention, right? Actually naming the interventions, the MINUSTA, the BINU, the MINUJUST, the new thing now, whatever they're calling themselves, but also all the way up till 1994, right? With those missions. So I think the work would benefit from spelling some of that out for audiences, especially who are not familiar with Haiti. So yes, and Marie-José Nzengutayo also, you know, is accentuating, right, that we need to better define, right, NGO, contextualize them historically, especially in relationship to international foreign intervention. But just to go back to Walner's question, I don't know if you want to read it, Felix.
Well, I was going to bring it back to Bernice Duisso's first question about with the current political turmoil impacting the country, how can scholars engage with vetted NGOs and some folks on the ground to continue doing this important research? I think you all were touching on the difference in NGOs and these organizations. So I don't know if you had any thoughts about that.
I'm not sure if I understood well the question.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's maybe towards the recommendation piece, right? There were the recommendations that you put up on the slide, which while Nair Osna had some questions, you know, for you on that, and then connected to your point about the diaspora, right, participating in development. So, you know, Bernice is saying, are there vetted Haitian-led organizations that we could already plug into to support the research and other things? I think the two are related to your what's next, right? The recommendations for what to do given the information, the data that you've collected. So are there groups already that you would suggest that we turn to support? That's one end. And also, while Usna around the recommendations say, right, the recommendations are not moving away from a liberal model. So what ethical, theoretical, epistemological, and political positions structure these ideas? So maybe that, that's a larger question.
Here I understand what, as we said, so as we mentioned before, it's understand the reality of the people, to see the situation, what's happening in Haiti. And it's, as I put the recommendations, yeah, it seems like the liberal model, but we can, like, destructive, if I can use those words. So when we go, we just right, but when we go to the on the ground and we know what's happening. So for us to put that on practice, what I wrote. So it's first of all, it's to see and start with the people and to think about their well-being, subjective well-being. I don't know if so. On not only as you mentioned, Dr. Prosper earlier. So not only um, I mean, so for them to understand what SDGs mean. So making the comparison to the definition of the UN about NGOs, and also for them what NGOs mean. So we take it in this way. We go to the ground and write our as a recommendation. We make a destructive. I don't know. To in order to understand the locals, the situation on the ground, and we work on that, not following the same step about liberal the form. So we go to the ground, we talk to the people, we see the situation, and we drive public policy about what they are facing. So, for example, I can't not thinking about the well-being of someone who is living in the United States the same way in Haiti, mainly in Sierra. I don't know if I expressed the idea.
I don't know if Felix, we would invite Walner to maybe clarify his question more. And maybe Walner, I know, is a stronger French speaker. If he wants to ask the question in French, I think that could be okay.
Sure.
Walner Oula?
Yeah.
Well, maybe he's not. Yes. So if anyone else has any other questions, okay. Si mwen se ta bon sou te ka repete kesyon pou nou te ka myo kompren ni, pou bay Andy yon chans pou repon sa wap pose vreman a la base. Yeah, so I don't, just want to keep asking some of the same questions. I don't know if you saw that I put them for you in the chat, about where you see taking this work, right? So the way you end the thesis around recommendations feels that part of it is to gen lèl pa ka pale parce que Julio has to give him the right to speak.
Ok, là, ça devrait aller.
Ok, vas-y.
Et en fait, bonsoir tout le monde. Moi, je vais poser ma question en français pour être plus clair. En fait, j'ai l'impression, selon ma compréhension des recommandations, que ces idées-là ne sortent pas nécessairement de la perspective libérale, voire néolibérale, qui structure toutes les politiques de développement en Haïti, et notamment avant, mais notamment après 2010, où il y a le PSDH, la stratégie de développement d'Haïti, qui guide les actions gouvernementales, mais aussi les actions de certaines ONG. Donc moi, je me demande, en fait, ça c'est ma compréhension des recommandations. Donc ma question c'est, d'où vous vous situez pour formuler ces recommandations. Parce que formuler les recommandations ici d'une recherche, je crois que ça provient d'un cadre théorique qui a ses implications épistémologiques, politiques et éthiques. Donc, c'est ça ma préoccupation. Parce que, comme je le disais, je comprends, ma compréhension des recommandations, c'est qu'elles ne sortent pas du cadre libéral qui structure les politiques de développement en Haïti.
Ok, je comprends. Allez, merci pour la question. Avant tout, le concept des recommandations, c'était comme je l'avais dit auparavant, c'est juste euh, ce sont des idées, des idées générales. Donc, c'est pas bien détaillé dans un sens point par point pour expliquer comment ça devrait être pour les mettre en fonction quand on parle de développement. Et j'ai compris l'incertitude, si je peux le dire ainsi. Donc, par exemple, dans l'une des recommandations, j'ai parlé de mettre en évidence des politiques publiques pour améliorer le développement de l'agriculture, ou le développement agricole. Voilà. Mais dans le travail, ici dans la présentation, je l'ai mis de cette manière, juste comme résumé, mais dans le research, dans l'investigation, j'ai mis par exemple que le gouvernement peut travailler sur des politiques publiques de crédit, pas seulement de donner des espèces aux paysans, mais aussi de donner par exemple, livestock. Si on peut dire que les paysans ont besoin de euh, des bœufs, des cabrites, voilà, ils reçoivent euh, les animaux comme pour les garder. Et ensuite, après, la manière de payer ou bien de rendre, je pourrais dire, leur part. Donc, c'est pas en espèces, c'est encore avec les mêmes animaux qu'ils ont reçus. Je ne sais pas si vous avez, si j'ai bien exprimé, si vous comprenez l'idée. Donc, c'est pas seulement, comme vous avez parlé de, par exemple, de les politiques de développement en Haïti. Voilà, je pense que c'est un point vraiment intéressant que je devrais y vérifier actuellement les politiques de développement en Haïti. Mais comme je vous ai dit, de manière en résumé, en synthèse, j'ai mis les recommandations dans la présentation. Mais si vous voyez bien l'investigation, vous allez voir euh, des idées plus concrètes, plus claires et plus expliquées, comme celle que je viens de vous dire. Par exemple, avec le crédit agricole, c'est pas seulement de recevoir des espèces, mais aussi le gouvernement peut mettre en place pour les paysans de recevoir des animaux et ensuite, eux, ils vont verser avec les mêmes animaux qu'ils ont reçus. Je ne sais pas si c'est bien clair.
Non, on a compris. D'ailleurs, ça, c'est une méthode qu'utilisent les mouvements sociaux dans leur pratique d'économie solidaire où ils font passer les bêtes de personne à personne. Comme ça, c'est pas l'argent, mais c'est le livestock. So I think I'm not sure, I feel like many people here might have understood his answer in French. I don't know that I need to translate. But I think what Walner is pushing to say is, if the state has deliberately abandoned people, has deliberately chosen not to support, right, national production, which you showed us in the graphs, right, that the state, again, up here, has put together, right, has made a series of decisions that we would call policies over the last 30, 40 years to weaken national production in general. Why then would this state infuse money to do what it already has decided? And you showed us the liberalization of the market, right, means that the state is taking a step back voluntarily from actually investing, right? Making Crédit Agricole possible, even approaching it the way that you're offering, right? That it's still that we're expecting the state to do what it has expressly said that it will not do, right? And so then how do we actually make these policies become, if this has been exactly the obstacle that social movements, for example, communities, organized or otherwise, have already been making these claims for the last 30 years, right? And the state is, and this is part of why I was interested in this difference between the state that makes neoliberal decisions versus the local government, Kazek, Azek, that are actually interested in the well-being of the people that they have to see face to face, right? And that they would probably embrace this model that you are projecting for, but they do not control the national budget and decide that the money can go here or there, right? So this is part of what Walner is saying. If the policy of the state at that level, right, that where it's interacting with international banks and supranational institutions is to abandon the population, how can then our recommendation be, hey, you all should do the thing that we think you should do that we've been saying to you for 30, 40 years? How do we come out of that? And is it, for example, what you mentioned really quickly and what Bernice was asking, that there are efforts coming from a more conscientious diaspora to do what the NGOs do to fill in the gap, or is there something else, right, that is actually less colonial, perhaps? But I think that's where Walner's question, Osna's question is going, is how do you make a state that has committed to a neoliberal project of abandoning the population somehow take up the work they've never done, because now they have the evidence, which again, they've always had the evidence that there is a need for government infusion into the economy, but yet don't do it because it's a policy of 40 years, right, that they're applying. Ma konen Walner si mwen an ti jan repren question en fason ki fè sens, men m'pense se justement diskusyon sa ta tre interesant, Andy, sou ka montre nou diferent nivou kote ke l'Etat a opérer on lot jan. Moun kazek azek yo gen lot vision de sa l'État ta supposé, alors que l'État central lan bon lot façon la fonctionner. Et c'était capable de montrer nous un bagay, une dynamique intéressante sur terrain, et pour nous comprendre avec plus complexité ça qui est de l'État, mais en même temps pour vocation et Walner Osna important. Comment tout d'un coup l'État central là va faire un travail que lui décidé que le pape fait depuis 40 ans. Walner, est-ce que plus ou moins poser question en façon qui allait avec son tabdia? And Angie, you don't have to have the answer now. I think these are answers we're giving you for consideration as you imagine this project to become what I assume, right, is a PhD project into something future. So no pressure.
Andy, if you have any last words to say about in response to Osna's comments, some of the things that Dr. Prosper was saying, If you have any closing statements you want to make regarding your project, yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was trying to think about the answer for Mr. Wallner. So as Dr. Prosper explained, and I understood uh, better. So yeah, I don't want to stay here with, I mean, with the project. I want to go further with the project, with the research. So these recommendations or comments from Dr. Prosper and from all of you who asked questions. So I'm taking them into consideration, and I took note. And you have to redesign and to work on them and to go further with the research. So just I want to thank you for the opportunity to discuss it today with you. And again, thank you for all the comments.
And thank you, Andy, for presenting your work. Thank you, Dr. Prosper, for commenting the work and pseudo emceeing the conversation between everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.